welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
This week we're discussing Chapter 7 of Golden Fool, Lessons. It starts with an epigraph as an excerpt from Trini's translation of Skillmaster O'Clough's Coteries. So it's just talking about how the formation of coteries should go. We've gotten a lot of excerpts from Trini's scrolls over the books here, and this one is kind of rehashing what we know about coteries, that they're not formed like Galen did as in the wartime way of forming coteries, but this is kind of saying, hey, get together a large group of students, at least 6, more is better, and then let them form their own attachments to each other. Put them together not just for lessons, but for activities, for sleeping, for meals, all of that. And as soon as they kind of form bonds into one group, you have your coterie. And the other people who are, excluded from that, they can become solos.
Right. It's, I think, a more in-depth look about the other way to create a coterie outside of Galen's way. Because Galen's way has been described, obviously, through Fitz's lived experience, but in the different skill scrolls that we have seen excerpts of, it has been described how to create the coterie in time of extreme need the way that Galen did.
It does take a lot shorter to do it that way.
Yes.
This one is kind of describing a long period of time of just like, hey, let them be kids.
Let them hang out.
Yeah.
Which... yeah, and those have been, and this way has been referenced as the better way before, right? Like there's a better way to do it, but if the need arises. So this is a deeper look at what that means to make a coterie the good way. And it also points out that it's really important for a skill master not to intervene. And because it's human nature to want to put the strength together, put all the strong kids together as that's a good group, and keep away the kids that are temperamental or shy. And the thing is that these people forming bonds will be closer if you let it happen naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And there are things that you can't know about their skill habits that could be of use to others in the group that you deem undesirable.
Trini specifically says, only a coterie can know what strengths it will take from each member. He who seems dull may provide steadiness and temper impulse with caution. The difficult member can also be the one who displays flashes of inspiration. Let each coterie find its own membership and choose its own leader. Trini also notes that this process to even form a coterie to begin with takes a year.
Yes. And this is really important, I think, going into this series or this book, because Fitz is going to form a coterie for Dutiful, although I believe it's less than 6 people. I'm 90% sure, because it's Thick and Nettle, right? And then Dutiful.
Thick, Nettle, Fool, Dutiful, Fitz, and Shade, I believe.
I guess, yeah. But, I mean, long-lasting, 3 of those 6 are not going to be in that coterie.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting to think on. And then also the importance of letting the coterie pick their own group and where each person stands, I think is really important, and something that Fitz kind of naturally is leaning towards. I mean, he already knows that like Thick is super skilled and very strong, but maybe not the best person to be in a group.
Right.
But I think later on he's brought around to the idea that he could be a good friend to the prince.
Yeah, Dutiful and Thick eventually become actually really good friends, and Dutiful is very kind around Thick.
Yes, and I think that's something that Fitz and Shade argue about later, because Shade doesn't see the point, and Fitz is like, whatever, who cares? So I think it's really interesting to see that that's kind of the good attitude to have, is to let skill users pick their own group.
Yeah. Before we dive into this chapter, though, I do have to give a little bit of, this is a Rob and Hobb chapter warning, where time is jumping around. So we kind of jump forward in time and then for about 5 pages in the middle, we go backward in time to a conversation Fitz had before this scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then we catch back up without even like any transition in
Yes.
between stuff. So we will be discussing how that kind of jumps around. But for now, Fitz is sitting in Verity's skill tower once again, and Dutiful walks in demanding, "Where have you been?" So we've kind of caught back up. We've skipped the whole journey that Fitz had back from his cabin back to Buckkeep. He is now at Buckkeep once again.
Yes.
And Dutiful walks in, as I mentioned, "Where have you been?" Fitz had been kind of hanging out in the tower, just looking out at the waves out of the window. And Fitz is playing the I will ignore your ill-tempered comments and just say, "Good morning, my prince."
Yes.
And he watches the prince kind of master himself a little bit. Not much. You can tell it's visible irritation, but at least Dutiful responds, "Good morning. It has been some time since I last saw you." Fitz is playing the deflection game a little bit here, saying like, "Yeah, I had to take some care of some important business, but now I'm back."
And it is kind of funny, right? So last chapter, Fitz was all mad that Dutiful never showed up to their first meeting and then immediately had to go.
Right.
And so it's funny then to have the tables turn and have Dutiful upset that he was stood up. And then Fitz has to be the one being like, "Well, I had things to do. Don't worry about it." But also, I think this really speaks to Fitz being the adult in the room, but it like mirrors a little bit how he was treated as an apprentice. And it's funny to see, I guess, Dutiful take on the Fitz role in this, and that he is a hothead and he doesn't understand everything, but he thinks he does. And so
Right.
he's coming in guns blazing. And then the adult in the room has to be like, "You silly child. Don't even worry about it. It was not that serious."
"I do not suppose I can ask more than that of you," Dutiful to Fitz there. I suppressed a smile and told him, "You could, but you would not get it." And then Verity's smile broke on the boy's face, and he exclaimed, "Where did you come from? No one else in the keep would dare speak to me so." And Fitz, even though he didn't want to really speak of the task he was doing, definitely does not want to speak of "Where did you come from?"
Yes.
So he kind of, again, deflects back into that, saying like, "Oh, I had to go back to my old house and take care of some things. I left them untidily and I don't like doing that. So I'm back now."
Yes. Which it's really interesting to me because I think it shows a little bit of the deception going on to even Prince Dutiful, that even though he's the prince and heir to the Farseer throne, he is not privy to everything. Obviously, again, he's a kid. He doesn't need to know all the details, but it seems like he should have been told that Tom Badgerlock was threatened. He has an identity he needs to keep secret. He needed to, or even just baseline, he had to go home because he didn't expect to be here so long. So he had to close up things there. Like, he came from nowhere. He came on a rush because you were missing. And nobody even explained that to the prince. It does make me feel a little bit sorry for Dutiful because there is so much being kept from him. But I also, it's conflicting because, again, he is like, 15? So he doesn't need to know all the details, but he should know something. He shouldn't be going into this blind.
But also, he's known Tom Badgerlock for maybe a week, maybe a little bit longer, maybe. Yeah.
Probably 2 weeks.
It's really hard for me to sympathize with Dutiful and think that he should know more, because he's a teenager trying to befriend like a 35-year-old who is being assigned to be his teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he expressed kind of some impatience with that to Chade or Kettrikin, or probably Chade. And Chade would probably be like, "Oh yeah, he'll be back." But he's not told anything of why he went, where he went, when he will be back,
Yeah.
So I can get his frustration, but I also don't think he really needs to know more at that point.
That's fair.
I don't know.
It's odd. I don't know how to quite phrase what I'm feeling.
Yeah. I mean, he is left in the dark about a lot of things as the prince, but
yes. And I understand to some extent that the need for that. However, it does feel like if this is somebody who is supposed to be the ruler of the duchies, you think there would be more you could let him in on.
Yeah, but in 2 years he'll be king in waiting. Then I think they kind of
So maybe it's because he's still just prince.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, there's the betrothal to think of. He literally just came back from being kidnapped. Like
Yeah, that's fair.
there's reasons not to involve him in things yet.
That's true. Also, I do want to point out that Fitz says that it's Verity's smile
Yeah.
that breaks out on his
Made sure to read that.
face. Yeah. And I find that part really interesting because, again, I think there's so much intention behind when Fitz is talking about Dutiful being Kettrican's son versus Verity's son. And so the intention behind, I don't quite know what the intention is every time, but I think it's important to continue to bring it up that, like,
Yeah.
in this moment, that smile has nothing to do with Kettrican. It's a farcier smile. And saying that it's Verity's smile is even more interesting, knowing that Verity is not his biological father. I don't know.
Fitz always thinks about him in his mind as Verity's child. Though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously, Verity is the father, but it's not Verity's genes. I mean, kind of.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I don't know. So that's the part that it's like, I don't know.
Fitz asks, where shall we begin? And it seems to unnerve Dutiful a little bit because Dutiful is going into this expecting Tom Badgerlock, his teacher, to have kind of all of the lesson plans.
Yes. Well, because, I mean, to be fair, in Dutiful's position, I am sure he's never gone to a lesson and had the teacher ask him, so what now?
Chade is probably a different teacher than Fitz is.
Yes. And that is a little bit on Fitz. He could explain the situation before asking, so where do you want to start? Or even have just phrased it in a way that isn't so like, I don't know anything. What do you want to do?
Before Dutiful responds to that question, though, Fitz is looking around the room and we get a little bit of a description of Verity's tower room, how a lot of furniture has been added and clutter has been added recently. Maybe not recently, but since Fitz's time at Buttkeep, 15 years ago. And Fitz made the addition of adding Verity's map to the wall as well. There's also a scroll rack, with some sort of sorting system that Chade probably insists is sorted properly, but Fitz can never tell how they're sorted. And then there are a couple locked chests of other skill scrolls as well that are, a little bit more valuable potentially.
There were also several trunks securely locked that held a selection of skill mistress Solicity's scrolls on the skill. That's important to me because later when he is picking the scrolls, he says he doesn't find any written by Solicity. So is this to mean that
I
they
think
were
her
just
collection?
Okay.
Yes, I think this is skill mistress Solicity's collection or library of scrolls that just don't need to be out.
Cool.
And some of the other ones are about, various things on the skill that are more beginner friendly, I guess, that Chade would have curated before this.
That's fair.
But Fitz also mentions that only the queen, Chade, and the prince are allowed in this tower. There is a guard at the base of it. Obviously, he can get to this tower through the wall access as well.
Which is really interesting because I'm pretty sure I remember in the first trilogy this not being accessible through a secret passage. Fitz always had to go.
Fitz was not privy to the passages in the wall. Remember, he kind of got told about them at the end of Royal Assassin, I think, when he went through the chasing to kill Justin and stuff. It was kind of led into it as this was a secret.
Okay.
He suspected that those things happened because there was a passage from his room up to Chade's tower room.
Right.
There existed a room between the walls at all,
Right.
But in this series or in this trilogy, they've been talking about, does your apprentice know about these passages?
Right.
Why can't your apprentice spy? And Chade's like, no, that's a journeyman thing or a graduation.
Right. That's
thing.
fair.
So I think this is kind of a secret and directions that he was given to by Chade lately, not since he was a kid.
That's fair.
Also, it's character building, to climb the winding stairs with a tray of food.
That's true. But as Fitz is looking at the grouping of scrolls that there are and Guildmistress's Solicity scrolls, he talks about how these are really important to not let anybody get a hold of because they don't want, and the reason that they're guarding it and only 3 people can get in is because they don't want the chance of losing this library again.
Right.
Then he goes into just the description about what happened in the first trilogy, where the skill mistress Celestia had died. All these scrolls had passed into the control of Galen, her apprentice. He had claimed her post as skill master, even though his training had been incomplete. He had supposedly completed the training of both Prince Chivalry and Prince Verity, but Chade and I suspected that he had deliberately truncated their education in the skill. Thereafter, he had trained no others until the time when King Shrewd had demanded that he create a coterie, and during all Galen's time in Skillmaster, access to these scrolls had been denied to all. Eventually, he disputed that the library had ever even existed. When he died, no trace of them had been found. So, I want to talk about 2 things in that passage I just read. One being his training, Galen's training, was incomplete when he taught the 2 princes.
Yes.
And then Chade and Fitz both suspect that he deliberately truncated their education. And that's something we discussed before, but
Yes.
I think I want to touch on the fact that he wasn't even fully trained himself. And he had that skill command to be faithful to chivalry. I think this is one of those situations where we can't attribute to malice what could be just stupidity.
About, truncating their education?
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like with the way the skill works, there's no way that somebody who has to be loyal to chivalry is...
I think it was... Oh, I can't remember the exact command now because I don't think it was loyal. It was like love, wasn't it?
Yeah, but or it's something loyalty/love akin.
Yeah, I don't remember exact command, but yes.
Yes, but if that is the case and we know how deeply that runs, you don't hide how to do something from someone you love and or are loyal to, right? Like that's just antithetical. And I mean, maybe not because of the way that Galen was raised. Maybe hiding things from your loved one was okay in his mind, so therefore it was a workaround.
But also, I mean, you have to say that he was aware of the skill command, right?
Yeah.
He was forced to obey it, but any way he could get out of it, maybe he would have taken. And if there wasn't a direct command to like, hey, train me to the best of your knowledge all the way, maybe he would just be like, oh, you're done.
That's fair. That's a good point.
But I get what you're going for. Like, with all of that said, he might not have known enough to continue training Verity and Chivalry and just kind of declared them good to go.
Right. And I'm not saying that it's impossible. He stopped them before they reached his level even, but he also was not fully trained. And yes, he has these scrolls, but did he read every single one of them while he was training them? I'm sure he did over the years by the time it gets to Fitz's time. But at that point, did he know any more than what he taught them?
And also we have to remember that in the Six Duchies, apprenticeships are the main thing. You do not learn from books and scrolls.
Right.
I remember Fitz and I think Patience and maybe Fedrin were talking about this at some point, like get education, get like how-to books and write knowledge down from master to master. And Fitz had a conversation of like, is that even good?
Yeah.
To like, because you can't get all the nuances out of a book.
Right.
So these scrolls do not specifically teach you things. They have diagrams and they walk through things, but the main learning is going to be from skill master to student.
Right.
So when Galen had his training incomplete when Felicity died, he was not able to self-learn all of what she knew.
Right.
Probably.
I mean, he definitely could have picked up some more stuff because there's that base knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the like nuances and the technique that you wouldn't be able to get down without somebody telling you, yes, that's correct. So I don't know. I thought that was really important to point out that yes, I think we have also talked on this podcast about that being a possibility, but I want to posit that potentially this is Fitz's own bias that is making us feel that way.
Yeah.
And potentially it's not as dark as we know, although they are fully capable of it. And
True.
Galen was not a good guy. And then also the fact that he pretends like these skill scrolls never existed is really interesting because we know that, and Fitz will go on to say, which we'll talk about, but we know that these scrolls were being sold off to Illustor
Yes.
during this time period and the Out Islanders in general. And so I think the idea that these never existed was more to protect if something did happen to Galen before Regal could take over. And they're like, where are all the records?
Of course.
Galen said there aren't any, so why would they be looking?
Of course.
And so I think that's also like a fun little detail of like,
Yeah.
Fitz is like, he's trying to be deceitful, and yes, he is, and this is why. And so
It makes so much sense to just deny that they were ever there to stop questions.
Exactly. And Fitz then continues to say that somehow possession of these scrolls had been passed to Regal the Pretender. And eventually, with Regal's death, they were recovered and had been returned to the Queen and then sent to Jade's safekeeping. But I think that's also kind of funny to be like, somehow they got to Regal. Galen was Regal's brother. Of course, Galen.
Some of the pros of like recapping the history falls into more of like Fitz writing history sections of his books, you know, where it's very much of an overview. Like Fitz would never specifically call Regal the Pretender unless he's writing as like the history, you know?
Yeah, I think actually, and this is a subsection of something that I've been thinking, but this chapter in general is a really good case study on why, or like good evidence on why this is probably Fitz writing down his history over time.
Yeah.
Because I know we don't really know either way if this is supposed to be like Fitz or B or somebody else writing down what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this chapter has a lot of things that make it seem like this is Fitz writing for somebody to read. And I'll talk about the other examples as we get to them. But he also is talking here about this history and what had happened and how once they got it back from Regal because he died, that both Chade and Fitz suspect that it had once been a substantially larger library.
Yeah. Chade had advanced the theory that many of the choicest scrolls that had to do with skill, dragons, and elderlings had been sold off to the Out Island traders in the early days of the Red Ship raids. Certainly neither Regal nor Galen had felt any great loyalty to the coastal duchies that suffered from the raiders. Perhaps they would not have scrupled to traffic with our tormentors or their go-betweens. The scrolls would undoubtedly have brought a good sum of coin into Regal's hands. At a time when the Six Duchies' treasury had come close to being depleted, Regal had never seemed to lack money with which to entertain himself and court the loyalty of the inland dukes. And the Red Ship Raiders had gained their knowledge of the skill and the possible uses of the Black Skill Stone from somewhere. It was even possible that somewhere in one of the straying scrolls they had found the knowledge of how to forge folk, but it was not likely that Chade or I would ever be able to prove it.
So I think this telling of the past is really cool because we get to look back again at what happened and have new information with which to work, because I believe in the first trilogy when Regal is sort of taking over, it's Verity is king in waiting. He's mostly spending time in his tower. There's a chapter in which there's a conversation about how Verity wants to make ships to help protect, and Regal says, we don't have any money. We can't do that.
Right.
And then Fitz is angry because Regal's partying all the time. And if we don't have any money for ships, how is he partying? And I don't know that it's focused on too much in that. And I don't even think we really touched on it that deeply. Maybe we did. I don't remember. But I think it's interesting then coming back here and seeing that, yeah, he obviously got the money from the scrolls. He wasn't depleting, because I think Fitz thinks he is taking from the treasury to make sure that Verity doesn't have the money to build these ships. I think that is a theory that Fitz believes in those books.
I think he's, in general, so I feel like this is a mistake by us in those previous episodes because we didn't count this.
Yeah.
I believe the theory that Fitz thinks is that since Regal was sent to collect taxes and raise money from the dukes and, you know, do all the diplomatic things, that he was taking those donations and not sending them to the crown.
Right.
And instead using them for parties. However, I'm thinking that Regal thinks that the skill scrolls are his rightful property and he's selling them off, and his own personal money is the ones that he's getting from the sale, so he's using that.
Right.
That paints Regal maybe a little bit of a better light than he ought to.
Right.
However, I think that's actually a good mindset to look into Regal with. Like, that's what he would think. Is like, nope, this is mine. Like, you can't, like, I'm not doing anything wrong. This is my money. I earned it from selling my property.
Yeah.
I'm doing my job that you told me, King Shrewd.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, not that Shrewd would
getting
care
as much money as you think we're getting because I have my own money.
Right. And, you know, maybe he's not really soliciting the Dukes at all for money, and that's why there's no money to be heard of. Like, he's not, I don't know. He's not a good guy. I'm not trying to argue that maybe secretly Regal was great, but
continue, sorry.
No, you're okay.
I was going to say that, like, that would also explain some of the goodwill that Verity and King Shrewd have towards Regal, because he is bringing in the money from the the duchies.
Yes.
That he said he was going out to collect.
Yeah.
So they're like, no, Regal is doing his job. And Fitz is sitting here, but he has so much more money than the crown.
Yes.
Like, yes, but he's still doing his job, technically.
Yeah.
He's just not, he's selling illegally off the crown's property.
Yes. And I think it really does. Okay. I think we sing these praises almost every other episode, but I think it really goes back to how deep these characters are written, that even someone like Regal, who we never get to read from his perspective, we barely see him most of the time, except through Fitz's limited perspective of who Regal is. It's really cool to know that there are things like this going on in the background that you have to really dig to get.
Yeah.
It just makes the world fuller. And so it's great that Robin Hobb is able to do that for us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was really important to bring this up because, like you said, I don't think that we talked about it enough in the actual time period. We didn't think about it or just remember this passage.
We definitely mentioned that the scrolls were sold. We just never thought about the money.
Yeah. And so here it really came forefront to my mind of like, oh my gosh, there's so much deeper happening. And I think you're right. It does go back to why maybe Chade, but why Verity and Shrewd both had so much more trust in Regal, even if they didn't like his methods or the way that he lived his life. Ultimately, on the surface,
he was contributing.
And honestly, just being a royal. Yeah, Fitz didn't like him for a lot of reasons, but you can't argue that he was a good politician.
True. Well, Dutiful is, as I mentioned earlier, confused of why his teacher is asking him, what do we do next? And Fitz asks him to pull up a chair and join him as Fitz is sitting down.
Sitting down in Verity's old seat.
Yes.
Specifically.
For a moment, he stared at me as if puzzled. Then he crossed the room, seized one of the heavy chairs, and lugged it over to a place beside mine. I said nothing as he sat in it. I had not forgotten our relative ranks, but I had already decided that within this room I would treat him as my student rather than my prince. For an instant I hesitated, wondering if my candid words might not undermine my authority over him. Then I took a breath and spoke them. And Fitz tells him a story of how he got trained, saying that, roughly a score of years ago, I sat in the room on the floor by your father's feet, and he sat here and skilled out. And he tells how Verity used the skill to help against the Red Ship Raiders. And then he also brings up Skill Master Galen and how he was supposed to train up a skill coterie and how that was supposed to help Verity do this, but it was not loyal. This coterie was not loyal to Verity and was instead loyal to Regal, his younger brother. Instead of aiding your father's efforts, they hindered him. They delayed messages or failed to deliver them at all. They made your father look incompetent. For the sake of breaking the loyalty of his dukes to him, they delivered our people into the hands of the raiders to be killed or forged. So the prince is kind of captured by this story, staring at Fitz during this. And Fitz can't really like look him in the eye, so he's staring past him a little bit as he's recounting these things, steeling himself because he's treading very close to who he actually is and the events that he specifically had a hand in, I guess.
Right. I also do want to point out that Fitz is probably saying stuff to Dutiful that he has never heard officially. Like, I don't know
I
that.
think he was taught these things, but maybe it's more of a personal thing because he's specifically saying, I was at your father's feet as he
Right.
was doing these things.
But also, I mean, are people going to go into depth? Nobody knows how skill works currently in Buckkeep Castle when Dutiful is being raised. They don't know how Verity used the skill. They just know that he
That's fair.
did.
That's fair.
And Fitz explains the intricacies of what he was doing with the skill to the Out Islanders.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure he knows that maybe he's heard of Galen and knows that he was the master, and maybe he knows he worked with Regal and that Regal was the pretender and what that all is. But does he know just how bad it was? Like, would they have gone into depth of what he did to be treasonous, or were
I
it's
think
still a
Chade
farseer
would have-
they're trying to?
I think Chade would have taught him the true history. I think Chade is kind of, yes, he's about keeping secrets to protect people, but I think since he's a ruler, since he's a farseer, he would like know the true history of the war, you know?
That's fair.
I'd like to believe that at least.
It just feels like one of those things where I wonder if Chade would be capable of talking bad about a member of the royal family, even with things as bad as Regal had done. Because also, I don't know how much Fitz was privy to that he didn't share with Chade because he didn't trust Chade with the information.
Yeah, maybe. Well, either way, Fitz then goes on to say that I was one of Galen's students. Because of my illegitimate birth, he despised me, which is a very nice half-truth there.
Yes.
I learned what I could from him, but he was cruel and unjust as a master to me, driving me away from the knowledge he did not wish to share with me. Under his brutal tutelage, I learned the basics of skilling, but no more than that. I could not predictably master my talent, and so I failed. He sent me away with the other students who did not meet his standards. And I want to highlight that because, again, this is something that we discussed in the first trilogy, but have not talked about a lot. It's always kind of sitting there in the back of our minds because it's true. But Fitz was extremely talented at the skill. He
Yes.
could reliably skill.
Yes.
He did reliably stand out among the students to begin with.
Yes.
And then he was skilled into by Galen, he was beat, all of those things, and then he could no longer reliably skill. So it was trauma and magic trauma that kind
Yeah.
of prevented him.
And what's interesting to me is that Fitz is phrasing it as though he has never been able to reliably skill. And I notice this isn't just an easy way to talk about it to the prince. This is how he genuinely believes he is. He
Correct.
thinks there's something wrong with him and his abilities to his core.
Repeatedly,
Yes.
he has told other people, like, I've never been able to.
No, I'm not good at skilling. I don't have any talent for it. It's erratic at best. Even when Verity would tell him that isn't true, and Verity would know, he still was like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm bad. And so I do think that that is part of something that Galen did.
100%.
Although it's odd because Fitz isn't aware that he was skill commanded by Galen, right? I know later when the healing scene happens to Fitz, something is fixed, but I don't know if he ever is aware of what Galen did on the skill side.
Well, there is, so when he is healed later on, when he almost dies to Lodwine and the Piebalds, that's also when Dutiful learns who he is. I think Kettrick tells him then, because that's the right time, because
Right.
he's almost dead. I think the healing fixes his skull. So one, his lock of hair that's gray no longer is gray.
Yes.
And two, he doesn't get headaches anymore.
Yes.
I don't specifically think that's from Galen, unless you're talking about something else. Well, no, I don't think that's, let me rephrase that. I don't think that's specifically from Galen skill commanding him or anything like that, unless you're talking about something else that's fixed.
No, I'm wondering if Galen gave a skill command. I believe somebody wrote in very early days about how they believe that Galen skilled Fitz to kill himself, and that's
We
why
talked about that
yes,
on the podcast.
and that, but maybe somebody then wrote in about how that has rippled affected his whole life, and so I'm wondering how that is touched on. Like, does he ever know that Galen has done something in the skill?
Right.
Galen knows he has been skilled into when that was done to him in anger, and later Dutiful finds out about the skill command. But does Fitz ever realize that he has been given a skill command by Galen?
I don't know. I don't know if he likes to dwell on it either enough to figure it out, right?
That's
because
fair.
Dutiful finds out because Fitz basically commands him in the skill to not to do something, and there's a strong like sense that Dutiful has to obey that.
Yeah.
Galen, we don't know for sure.
And I guess Galen's commands could have been close enough to Fitz's low self-esteem that it just really enmeshed and made worse a situation that already existed.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
He walks a line here and then, but also has that kind of innate, I've never been good enough, so I was let go from this. And also, he hated me. Yeah.
Which is, I don't know. I mean, yeah, he can't say why Galen hated him because that would reveal who he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just that omission of him ever being talented.
Mm-hmm. He goes on to say mostly truthful things, though, saying that he was let go from that training. And so he stayed on as a servant here. Or he says, I continued to work as a servant here in the keep. And then he brought meals to Verity. They found out that Verity could take strength from Fitz. And then Verity started teaching him when he could for the skill. I turned to face Dutiful and waited. His dark eyes probed mine. When he left on his quest, did you go with him? I shook my head and answered truthfully. No, I was young and he forbade it. And you didn't try to follow him later? He was incredulous, his imagination fired with what he was sure he would himself have done in my place. It was hard to say the next words. No one knew where he had gone or by what paths. I held my breath, hoping that would still his questions. I didn't want to lie to him. He turned away from me and looked out over the sea. He was disappointed in me. I wonder how different things might have been if you had gone with him. So Fitz reflects that like he'd often thought the same thing, but also had thought that then Kettricken would have died and Regal would be on the throne.
Right. But also, does this mean that he doesn't know that his father turned into a stone dragon?
I'm not sure.
Because if Fitz would have gone, let's say Kettricken does survive if Fitz goes with, Fitz then is just also absorbed into the dragon. Verity still isn't alive.
Yeah.
So, like, the way that he phrases it makes me feel like nobody explained to him the exact sacrifice his father has made for the duchies. And that just kind of struck me as odd, because I thought that'd be something that Kettricken would tell Dutiful.
Yeah, you'd think
or
so.
Jade, even. But it is kind of funny to see the I would have followed. Well, not under the same circumstances you wouldn't.
It says he's often pondered that same question, but also, I was very young, quick-tempered, and impetuous. It might be just as well that I was a hindrance to him if I did go. I tell you these things to be sure you understand well that I am no skill master. I have not studied all those scrolls. I have only read a few of them. So, in a sense, we are both students here. I will do my best to educate myself from the scrolls even as I teach you the basics of what I know. It is a hazardous path we will tread together. Do you understand? I understand. And of the wit? I had not wanted to discuss that today. So he also tells a little bit of story of how he came to the wit, similarly to Dutiful, but he bonded when he was young to a puppy, and it wasn't until very much later that he encountered someone who was willing to teach him.
He does say, I was a man grown before I met anyone who tried to put my random knowledge of my magic into a coherent framework. Fitz was like 17 when he met Black Rolf. So, not exactly a man grown, but Okay. If that's how you want to frame it.
He had been to war.
Okay. Well, he also says that, again, time was my enemy, and that maybe if I'd learned from a younger age, it would have been better, but, I couldn't spend forever with those people, and I learned what I could. And Fitz is like, Fitz keeps pushing down his knowledge. He's like, I don't know anything. I'm not a very good teacher. I'll try my best. And so Dutiful is like, your confidence is so inspiring. And then he laughed. A fine pair we shall make, stumbling along together. Where do we begin?
And so Fitz is like, well, you have to unlearn a lot of things because you use the wit and skill together. Are you aware of that? Dutiful's like, what?
Yeah,
He's
he
just staring
stares blankly.
And so they continue on with the basics of skilling.
Well, not really. He doesn't ever fully explain anything that we can read to Dutiful. But he does say our first step will be to untangle your magics from one another, even though he thinks to himself that he has no idea how they're going to do that. He can't even do that himself. And he wants to set aside the wit for now. Then Dutiful says, have you ever known any other like us? Like us how? With both the wit and the skill. And then Fitz has to make a decision, truth or lie, and he decides to go with the truth.
Yes.
Which is that he met a man once that he thought was just very strongly witted, but looking back, now he believes that he also had the skill, and he just didn't know that they were two separate magics.
And this is Black Rolf, that you can kind of glean from the text here, because he always seemed to know what was going on in between Fitz and Night Eyes, even when they were, in their eyes, making their communication as small as possible.
Yes.
And then he also deflects on who Black Rolf is to Dutiful, just saying, like, oh, he's just a man long ago who taught me the wit, Let's focus on why we're here today. And Dutiful is hopping around, as he always does in these conversations, to different topics, and he says, Civil? What? Civil has been instructed in the wit. Since he was a small child, perhaps he would be willing to teach me. As he already knows I am witted, it is not spreading my secret about, and I think the look on my face made him falter into silence. I waited until I trusted myself to speak. Then I pretended to be a wiser man than I was. I tried to listen before I spoke to him. Tell me about Civil, I suggested. And then, because I could not quite control my tongue, I added, tell me why you think it is safe to trust him. And he appreciates that Dutiful thinks about this before he answers. And Dutiful talks about how when Civil presented the cat to him, which was the first time that Dutiful met him, it was as if he was presenting a friend, not a belonging.
Yes.
And when he offered to teach Dutiful to hunt with the cat, it was as though he was teaching Dutiful to hunt, not spending alone time with the prince.
Right.
There's a distinct difference between those things, and Dutiful is a little bit embarrassed to talk about that because it is, it's seemingly bragging of like, oh, I have to be aware because I'm so popular and powerful. I have to be aware of who's disingenuous to me. And he explains a little anecdote of some lady who invited him to watch a puppet show from masters from this duchy. And then she spent the whole time talking about a land dispute. Just things like that where you have to be aware. So when Civil shows pleasure and genuine interest in teaching a skill, not just spending time with the prince, that really connects with Dutiful and is like, yeah, this guy is awesome. He's not just here because I'm a prince. He wants to teach me.
Right. And also he says, like, if he wanted to do me harm, why wouldn't he have done it then when we were alone and hunting? Hunting accidents happen all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he says, I really thought I had finally discovered a true friend. Fitz refuses to talk because he's using Chade's old trick of letting people
fill in the blanks for their own questions.
Yes. So when I thought I was falling in love with someone, when I thought I had to flee this betrothal, well, I went to Civil. I sent him a message. When we had parted, he told me that if there's anything he could do for me, I had but to ask. So I sent the message, and a reply came telling me where to go and who would help me. But here's the odd thing, Tom. Civil says now that he never got any message from me, nor sent me a reply. Certainly I never saw him after I left Buckkeep. Even when I reached Gaelton, even when I stayed there, I did not see Civil or Lady Brazinga. Only servants. They made a place for my cat in their cattery. But you did stay in the manor. Yes, the room had been made up fresh, but I do not think that it was a wing of the house that was used much. And so everyone kept emphasizing the need for secrecy and how he needed to be able to slip away easily. And whenever word that Fitz and the Fool were coming, that's when everyone decided he needed to leave then. But the people who were supposed to take me hadn't arrived yet. The cat and I went out that night and your wolf found me. And I thought that's a really important piece of the puzzle because that's
why Dutiful was alone.
Yes, that's why he was alone. But also that is such a catalyst move that Fitz came at just the right time, that there weren't people ready to take him.
Yep.
He was able to get the trail of where Dutiful was and where he was heading.
Mm-hmm. And now Civil says he did not even know that the prince was there. And Fitz kind of guesses that. And Dutiful's like, yeah, neither he nor his mother knew. He swore it. He suspects a servant intercepted my message to him and passed it on to someone else, who replied to it and arranged all the rest. And this servant is long gone. He vanished the same night I left there. We counted back the days, and so it seems. It seems to me that you and Civil have discussed this in depth. I could not keep the disapproval out of my voice. When Lodwine revealed himself and his true intentions, I thought Civil must be a part of it. I felt betrayed by him. That was a part of my despair. I had not only lost my cat, but also discovered that my friend had betrayed me. I can't tell you how wonderful it felt to learn that I was wrong. Relief and earnest trust shone in his face. So Fitz is thinking like, oh, okay, so he trusts Civil. And now he's kind of despairing like, okay, compare that to how soon he trusted me. I gave him no reason to trust me, and yet we've connected a little bit, and then he immediately trusted me. Maybe Dutiful is just so lonely and so yearning for any sort of human decency and contact that he establishes that as a friendship right away.
It was as if he were so isolated that any close contact at all became a friendship in his mind.
So he's holding his tongue against this because he still doesn't trust the Civil story.
No. Well, I mean...
It's very convenient.
Yeah, it's very convenient that Civil had no idea, even though
it must have been a servant that left the day that you did.
And now that I'm thinking about it, he left the exact day you did, now that I'm doing the math.
Right. It's very convenient.
You could lie about it.
We know it's true. Yes. It's just very convenient.
It is very convenient. And it's... I mean, maybe... Dutiful is really good at reading people, and so he can see beneath other things to know when people are trustworthy. Maybe he has some weird talent for that. He is a royal after all, but it is interesting that despite being trained by Chade, as he grumpily tells Fitz he was later, he can't see through that. He has a bias when it comes to somebody he has decided as a friend. And it is also funny to me that this is so different to how Fitz was, because Fitz was also isolated in his growth, but he didn't then give blind trust to just any connection he had. In fact, the closer somebody connected with him, the more distrust he had for them, it feels.
Remember, though, he also bonded Young multiple times, so he had somebody to talk to and be with. So he never felt isolated because he was always connected to a wit partner. The only times he truly felt isolated was right after his bond partners died.
Yeah.
And Smithy dying, he still had Molly.
That's
he
true.
could feel like he had somebody that was just his, you know?
That's fair.
Even if that wasn't a very healthy response to things, and it's not healthy for him to be bonded that closely.
Right.
If he had nobody and Beric knew he had the wit and he obeyed not bonding or anything like that, and he went through Galen's training and didn't have Smithy. Oftentimes, I believe in Assassin's Apprentice, he talks about, if I didn't have Smithy, I wouldn't have stuck around. So I feel like it's different just because he was able to stay bonded as a kid.
Okay.
But I agree with you. They handled that differently, but I think it's because Fitz had a little bit of an escape, like a
Okay.
support system that way. And Dutiful is truly, truly alone.
That's interesting. I feel like
maybe Kettrick also trained him to be more open and trusting than Chade trained Fitz.
I mean, I feel like, to be fair, the way that they are both raised are so completely different, obviously. There's so many differences. It's really hard to compare the two, but I think Fitz has had reason to massively distrust every single person he's ever been close with. I mean, the very first memory he has is of being abandoned by his maternal grandfather into a place that he has no knowledge of as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. Like, yeah, not great. I'm sure that doesn't instill great trust for people who say they love you or who want to be close to you or make you feel like you can trust that people are who they say they are. I'm sure it makes you a little bit less trustworthy than a prince who has been pampered and truly loved by multiple people, even if that means that he had a more isolated childhood. So there's less of that distrust there anyway, which is good and bad, I guess. Mm-hmm. But Fitz is frustrated because he doesn't want to, I think it almost feels like he doesn't want to taint Dutiful with the sort of ideas that you need to distrust everyone. I think he kind of takes that on as his role of, I will distrust him for you.
Yep.
But he really artfully gets him to hit pause on continuing that friendship or going deeper and making Civil the old blood teacher by sort of artfully getting him the idea of, like I said, we don't want to mingle. I don't want you learning both at the same time. Let's just keep let's put that off for later.
Yep. And for a time, Dutiful stares off into the distance and thinks about it. I knew that he had looked forward to Civil teaching him, that he had hungered for that sharing. But he took a breath, and then he replied quietly, if that is what you think best, that is what you and I shall do. Then he turned and met my eyes. There was no reluctance in his face. He accepted the discipline I offered him. He was of good temperament, amiable, and willing to be taught. I looked into his open glance and hoped I could be an instructor worthy of him. I wanted to highlight that because it's different than what Hap is going through right now too, right? Any sort of instruction that Hap takes, even from Fitz, is met with, a wall of no, I know what's best.
Yes. But I do wonder a little bit if the prince's amiability is due to that skill command to listen.
It could be, yeah.
And maybe right now, because it's something that he already was predispositioned to, Fitz is the adult, he is the expert, he's saying that this is important, he's able to sort of weigh the pros and cons and come to the conclusion of, yeah, I guess it might be good. But that could also be subtly nudged in that direction because he already has that loyalty and feels like he has to listen to Fitz's commands.
That's definitely true. I will say that Fitz is being very careful here, and I appreciate that, of phrasing everything as, I would prefer that you did not. I have told you I think it would be best if we, and letting the decision up to the prince, right? That's propriety as well. He's the prince, he can't command him, but also trying to minimize the damage of that skill command.
That's fair.
Okay, I think we will stop it right there for now then. We've got a lot left in the chapter, and we will pick up next week where they start their skill lesson. Thank you so much for tuning in so far to this chapter. If you have thoughts on it, please let us know. It is fitzhappy@gmail.com. Or as always, you can message us or find us at any of our social medias at isfitzhappy on YouTube, Reddit, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads. I think that's all of them. Facebook. There we go. That's the big one. So please let us know what you got going on in your life, what you think about the chapter so far. Thank you.
All right, time for the best part.
And of course, before we do, Huge shout out to our supporters on Ko-fi. Thank you, Neva, Anna, Degenhart, and Zakita. And thank you, Simon, as well. Thank you so, so much for all of your support and your tips, your generosity. We appreciate that.
Yeah, it's really kind. We really, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And on to the fun comments and ideas you guys have brought to our attention. We'll start first with a Facebook comment we got from Ellen on episode 292. And this comment was, I really thought you would bring up Lord Golden's line when talking to Laurel, that he thought it a fine idea to have a manservant, bodyguard, etc., and for my other needs, quote. Isn't that feeding the rumor and speculation going around? That sounds very deliberate to me, and like Beloved is feeding the rumor himself.
I agree with that. It's to Laurel, so I don't think she took it the same way, because she was there when she knew like something else was going on between them, right? And she was more upset about that. But like it is, and it's the same attitude that Lord Golden has had since coming back. Like he's really leaning into that role as hinting at things that Fitz is not, and talking about, morality and things like that. It's really interesting.
Which would actually be a point towards him trying to save Fitz's reputation by saying Fitz won't service those needs, so he needs a different manservant to do such.
Could be, yes.
Although I guess if he gets another manservant and doesn't hit on him, then maybe that makes it look like Fitz is the one servicing those needs. I don't know. It's tough. But it could be seen as like a way to try to protect Fitz a little bit.
Yeah. It's kind of a lose-lose for Lord Golden in this situation, though, because obviously Lord Golden has a reputation and Jamalia has a stereotypical reputation as well that Lord Golden is kind of playing into a lot.
Right.
To solidify that kind of relationship as a Jamalian lord. So, I don't know, dressing Fitz in very flamboyant, tight-fitting, nice outfits and hinting at all these things. Like, yeah, it's good for his Jamalian lordship, but not good for anything else.
Yeah. I think it just speaks to the fact that you should never work with your friends.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Too many complications.
That's a good shout out, though, Ellen, because we didn't really touch on it that much.
Yeah. So
I kind of breezed over it because it was Laurel, but it's still really good to bring up because that is kind of the attitude that Lord Golden has had.
Right. And he is still talking in a place where he thinks he could be overheard.
True.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ellen. We also got a DM that is also about Laurel, but it's more on the position of huntswoman, and that's from Peculiar Ponies on Instagram.
Yeah.
And they DM to say that being a huntswoman is more similar to being a forest ranger than a soldier, I think. And then they hope that ranger is the right term because in Dutch they call it boss watcher.
Yeah, and it is.
Yes.
A park ranger is kind of the government position that we have for like our national parks and things.
Yeah, I think there's technically rangers in military as well, but I don't know it's the same thing. I don't know enough about that part of the military, if I'm being honest. So.
Or it would be like working for the DNR, which is the Department of Natural Resources, as a ranger in that way, something like that. That's what I assumed as well. Peculiar Ponies kind of outlined what they thought the role would be. It would be, tracking populations of animals that are being hunted, going on hunting trips, keeping an eye on poaching, things like that, which I think is what I had in mind for this position as well.
That's fair. And for some reason, I was thinking that was more what Burek would do as head of the stables, but because he owns all the animals in the buckkeep, but that's different animals that he's in charge of. And I
mean, the dogs would be used for hunting, right?
Yeah.
However, he's just in charge of training them, not going out hunting.
True. And I don't know. I guess for some reason, I thought huntswoman was just sort of like a fancy title that meant one thing to the rest of the world, but secretly she's basically Chade, but in the open for Ketcherkin. So that's, I think, where some of my confusion was coming. But I think you are right that technically a huntswoman is the role that is being described here by Peculiar Ponies.
And Peculiar Ponies goes on to say that the huntswoman or this ranger person would probably accompany the hunts to, guide or indicate where game is, that sort of thing. And that's where Ketcherkin could have first met her. So that's where they would have been introduced. And since she wouldn't be a fighter and Fitz was the only fighting person of the group, she was even more kind of upset and appalled by the violence with the Deerkin confrontation.
Right.
So it's a good point out. Thank you for kind of defining those roles. I agree with them. That's kind of what I had in mind as well.
That's fair. I think that's a good thing to point out. I'm sure most of the people who read it also understood that, but thank you for anyone else out there who was like me and didn't for explaining it. So thank you, Peculiar Ponies.
And then we had an email from listener Allie. This is on the topic of the skill link between Fitz and the Fool. So we had that conversation about how when Fitz is waiting in his room because he hears Lord Golden talking to Laurel, he doesn't want to be noticed, and then he waits a little bit and then sneaks out of his room, and the Fool notices him, right?
Right.
He's not making any noise, but he turns and greets Fitz, basically. So Allie is talking about that and our kind of brief conversation about maybe the possible causes of that, and we brought up the skill connection between the two of them.
Yes.
Allie says that while I don't necessarily think that Beloved can always sense Fitz because of the skill bond, I think he is just like that. They do mention that Beloved is a lot more aware of Fitz than Fitz is of him because Beloved doesn't have the skill naturally. Basically saying that Fitz is always skilling strongly out or always has that presence, and Beloved, since they don't have the skill naturally, is like barely registers on Fitz's awareness because of all of the noise that he's blocking out usually. And that kind of goes with what I was saying this chapter of maybe he always has those kind of walls up and drowns out background noise unless he's specifically focusing on them. So that kind of skill awareness of Beloved isn't always there.
That's true. I was, after reading this, also wondering if potentially it could have something to do with being Fitz being the catalyst.
Yeah, true. And that's what Allie kind of goes into as well here, saying that in Fool's Fate, when they first encounter the Black Man, the Fool tells Fitz that he is aware of all the possibilities that Prilkop's presence presents and says he feels the same way about Fitz. The way he describes it almost felt like the way that Fitz is aware of life using the wit. This might just be how I read it, but it makes me wish to get a Beloved point of view to understand how he perceives the world. And I think we get a little bit of that actually in the final trilogy. I think it's the first book.
Yeah.
Where B encounters the Fool right before Fitz stabs him.
Yeah.
And they kind of connect, and when they touch, it's the unexpected son, right? You see all these kind of visions and like branchings of people, and B looks around and can see like, oh, this person is going to do this today. Or maybe this could happen, but it's most likely they're going to like trip and fall and whatever.
Right. Well, because B is already sort of starting to see those possibilities. It's only when she connects with Lord Golden that she sees all of them.
Right, exactly.
Which is really important because up until that point, she does not. And
it's mostly dreams and stuff.
Yeah. And he sees them like that all the time, it seems, though he hadn't until he touched with her again.
Right, exactly. So I think that's kind of the perception that he's describing that Allie brings up here. And it's really interesting because Prilkop is such a wrench in everything.
Yes.
But it's an interesting topic to bring up on his perception of the world, or on their perception of the world, because I hadn't really spent a lot of time dwelling on it. But if that's how they always feel around Fitz, that's kind of crazy. So like it might be more, visible in their eyes or their perception when Fitz is around.
That's fair.
We just don't know how it works.
Yeah, it is. It is one of those things I wonder. I think about it a lot because I feel like I care more about the rules of the magic systems than you do in a way.
Yeah.
Not in a negative way. I just think that the way that I read it, that's what I care about. So I'm constantly like tinkering with the ideas of how do we get from point A to point B. And so I have thought a lot about how that magic might present itself based on what limited knowledge we have. And I do wonder if partially it is like Fitz's little skill walls where we
can block it
have,
out a little
yeah,
bit.
Dutiful can, or not Dutiful, oh my goodness.
Beloved.
Beloved can sort of pay attention to what he wants to, but if he opens himself up, he can see all of the possibilities. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool part of that. Thank you for that, Allie. But Allie also goes on to talk about non-piebald-witted people and the piebalds and that kind of conflict and that discussion that we had about that and why they wouldn't expose the piebalds as witted. Because we had this conversation of like, if you were witted, you would immediately go, that person's witted, and out them.
Because I am petty, and don't you dare come threaten me and my family.
Right.
I will get you and yours.
Exactly. Allie says that they probably don't do it because the piebalds would retaliate against any other witted person because they don't care about them as a group. So the non-piebald old blood are probably not trying to, result to mob justice because that would harm their whole community, not just their local community.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. I definitely see what you're saying, and I appreciate that look. I think in my mind, I'm not stopping at the one person who accused me. I'm going after all the piebalds. I'm like, oh, okay, you're going to be a danger to me and my family. You better watch out. Sleep with one eye open. I'm coming for you. But also maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. I'm not in that actual position. I'm just thinking highly of my own self.
Right.
Who knows? But I do think that's a good point.
Allie finishes this up with a question, though, asking, do you think Beloved knows about what is happening or going to happen between Fitz and Jenna? Is he jealous of her or just upset that Fitz isn't spending that time with him?
Okay, I think this goes back to our discussion we just had of how the powers work. And I don't know if he knows about Jenna and Fitz being tied together. Certainly there's a possibility he's met both of them. However, he would know that ultimately they're not going to last, so maybe he more sees this as like a comfort to his friend. The way that he begrudgingly was allowing Fitz the opportunity to get with Starling again in the inn after the loss of Night Eyes.
I think it comes from a place of friendship more so as well. Like, I'm with you on there. Like, he wants to comfort Fitz. Beloved wants to comfort Fitz and doesn't know how to do that or is incapable of doing that always the way that Fitz needs and is upset at the situation, not necessarily at Fitz's decisions, although probably a
little bit, I'm sure. He's not a saint.
Just when he denied Starling, he was very happy, you know, and proud of Fitz for denying that. But I'm with you on that one, where it's like out of a want to comfort his friend.
Yes, but also I feel like Beloved is sad about his lack of time to spend with Fitz because I think right now there's a huge miscommunication happening, and
I think the fool feels guilty about it because he can tell that Fitz is completely blind to it.
It's really hard because I think there's a lot of layers of what's going on. I think Beloved wants to be spending more time with Fitz. I think he wants to be there for his friend. And I think Fitz also wants to be with his friend and to have time to spend together. However, there are so many other responsibilities pulling each of them apart, and there's misunderstandings layering up. And so it's sort of creating this gap that's just widening by the day.
Yeah.
And I think there is jealousy. I think there is sort of a sadness that Fitz isn't choosing to pick him. Mm-hmm. However, I think that that's like the bottom of the pile. I don't think that's necessarily like the main driving force.
And from Beloved's point of view, there's this yearning that's been there for a long time, right? Carving Paragon into Fitz's likeness and coming back and spending wonderful time at their cabin and exchanging names.
Yes.
Which means a lot more to Beloved than it did to Fitz, even though Fitz kind of was told. And exposing more of who they were, you know, and then going on this journey together. They're together again a little bit. And like you said, these misunderstandings are creating that rift in between them, right? They were growing closer. And then all of a sudden, things are conspiring to tear them apart again. And Beloved doesn't know how to rectify that without creating that rift even more or deepening it, or if it's necessary to do right now, or maybe sees like they can't do that right now. Just making those choices or letting Fitz make those choices, because remember, Beloved is also scared of altering things. Not as much as in the first trilogy, because as Beloved recounted in this one, they were still coming into their own powers. They were still an adolescent, didn't know what they could or could not do with their white prophet abilities,
Right.
or what they should or should not do, and left a lot of it up to Fitz. This time they're taking a little bit more initiative. However, still might just be letting the catalyst do what needs to be done and not prodding things in a certain direction.
Yeah, I
So,
think there is a little bit of not fully knowing what
yeah.
exactly it is they're supposed to do.
That could also be a little bit of an excuse that they're internalizing, just
True.
being like, I have to take no action at all. I can't do this.
Yeah.
Because they're scared of that confrontation. I don't know.
I agree.
But I think, to your question, I think it's a little bit of both. That is a little bit jealous that Fitz can find comfort with somebody else rather than them, but also just missing that time together.
Yeah, I think so. So thank you for that, Allie. It was very fun to think on. All right. I know we just said finally, but actually finally, we have an Instagram comment also from Andrew What? And they commented in talking about how they just finished listening to episode 291. They had a few random things that came to their mind. The content of the episode, can we talk about how crazy it is that Kettricken has the ability to feel Night Eyes' passing miles away when her wit sense in many ways seems superficial, like she's just brushing the surface of what wit actually permits depth-wise, not being able to form full thoughts, yet still getting a feel for what Night Eyes meant when they were hanging out. From the whole dutiful rescue mission part of the book, it seems that wit is affected and limited by distance. When Fitz goes through the pillar, he wonders if his wolf might be dead because he cannot reach out at all and find him. Arguably a lot more distance, but he is fully joined to Night Eyes. So how come she can sense him so far away? They also mentioned that when Fitz first notices Kettricken's use of the wit adjacent skills, he feels her reach out during her meditation, and they seem to recall that she would stretch out her senses super far. So they suspected that this could also be attributed to Night Eyes' wit ability. He is the one to come find Fitz repeatedly and such. So
seems to have like better recall and more instinctive grasp of that wit ability, or maybe stronger than Fitz has himself. But yeah, it seems that maybe Night Eyes has a longer range or more powerful wit.
And maybe that's why he could give Kettricken knowledge of what he was saying despite her lack.
But either way, love the relationship with Night Eyes.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think that their relationship, or that this is evidence that Kettricken is super strong in the wit in some way?
I don't think she's super strong in the wit. I think I agree with your Night Eyes is super strong kind of mention there, Andrew, because repeatedly it's said that Kettricken isn't strong, and Webb does say that she's probably strong enough to start, maybe trying to bond or something like that, but also not like, she's not crazy, she's not like a Burek kind of level or something like that, or a Webb level. But I think with what we spoke of before with their connection, Kettricken and Night Eyes, I think they did have some sort of bond. I hesitate to use that word because it's not a partnership bond, but some sort of connection there. And it's not surprising that she felt him go if they had that, because that is some sort of connection that then you lose or is severed. There's kind of a feel of loss even if you didn't know it was there.
Right.
With Fitz not being able to sense Night Eyes across those distances, I'm also not surprised, because Night Eyes was probably hiding him and shielding himself from Fitz because he was in pain. He was stabbed.
Right.
He didn't want Fitz to worry or come back because he wanted Fitz and the cub to escape.
Yeah.
So in my mind, he was completely blocking Fitz as much as he could during those times. And Fitz maybe wasn't as strong as Night Eyes, because we've heard that and read that Night Eyes can completely block Fitz's perception of him.
Yes. Which I don't know if maybe Fitz can't do the same or doesn't want to.
I think he just doesn't want to. I think he could. Because it's a mutual partnership. I think one side could just withdraw for a little bit.
Yes. And I know this isn't like the best example to bring up. It's like an icky thing that I think the fandom in general, we don't like thinking about. But there is also the example of Fitz passing out and Night Eyes taking over his body for that instance with Molly. And so I'm wondering if too, like that points again to Night Eyes just being super powerful, because that wasn't necessarily something that Fitz allowed to happen. Night Eyes just sort of did it.
Right.
I don't know. Who knows? Maybe that's part of it, is that he's just super strong. I feel like Kettricken could reach out really far, which maybe, but I think I like the idea that it's Night Eyes.
Yeah.
And his own little personal bond he had separate. And like you said, not bond in the formal capital B sense, but lowercase b bond that he had with Kettricken. I think that's a really good call there.
Mm-hmm.
They also wanted to talk about Ellis's comment about the dead blue kittens. They said, I agree with them that the abominations being scared of cats is because they remind them of dragons. And on that line of thought, I think the kittens could symbolize the dragons/serpents that Kennit is bringing back by his actions. I can't remember the number of either cats or dragons, but the fact that they are specifically young ones makes sense. The extreme of the reaction of the others could also be explained by the fact that they can interpret this omen and it's bad news to them.
It's really interesting. I think there are way more dragons in Rain Wilds that hatch than there are kittens in the bag, but it's a really interesting connection. And like,
there's not really that many dragons that survive though to go on. There's like what, maybe a dozen?
Yeah, but there was only,
it wasn't there like a dozen cats in the bag?
I thought there was only like 9 or like 7 or something like that.
I guess I don't remember how many dragons there are, because I don't think there's that many.
I think it was over a dozen.
You think Hebe, the 3 boys, and then 2 other girls. That's like 7 or 6.
No, that there's a so there's a list here. I think it's Cintara, Fenty, Hebe, Mercor, Sestican, Varys, Arbuck, Balliper, Tinder, Ranculos, Callow, Dortean, Scrim, Relpta, and Spit. Like 15.
But don't some of them die like on the way to Kelsingra?
Maybe one, but I don't think more than just one.
Because I thought there was like a big flood or something and it sweeps some of them away and they never find them.
These are so it also lists all their keepers, and I think most of these are still there. Like Timara, Tats, Rapskull, Sylvie, Lecter, Jerd, Alum, Workin, Nortel, Harrican, Greft. Greft dies, we know that, but Kalo rebonds. Because he's the biggest dragon. Case, Boxster, Cedric, and Carson. So I think there's quite a few dragons actually near the end. But I do like the symbolism there of like what the kittens could represent.
Yeah. They're being taken out of the ocean.
Yeah.
And presented to Kennit.
Yeah,
who
exactly.
Does gain control over the baby serpents in the ocean for a time, even if it's not about his. I mean, I guess you could also interpret it as like he does use them for his own gain.
Yeah, true.
And then abandons them. But despite that, they do still come back. So I don't know. I do like there being more meaning to it, though. So I love this interpretation. I'm obsessed.
I like the what you just said, actually, that he uses them for his own gain, because he doesn't take them with him.
No.
He just uses the knowledge of them to scare the other and then can flee. And that's what he does with the serpents, basically.
Yes, he uses them to flee.
And to fight, but
fight, but also to flee from his problems in some ways.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the message.
Yeah, so thank you, Andrew. What? It's a fun name. And thank you to everybody else who's reached out. It's always fun to hear from you guys, and we can't wait to hear what you say next week.